Close your eyes now. Let your body soften beneath the blankets as your breath slows and your limbs grow heavy, with nowhere to be and nothing to do. Just rest and stillness as we travel far back, beyond screens, noise, and memory, tens of thousands of years into the Stone Age, before paper, before cities, before names, to a world where fire was magic, stars were gods, and survival was a quiet prayer, where there are no houses, only huts of hide and caves marked by forgotten hands, where you live with your small tribe, sleep near the fire, breathe in the scent of smoke and earth, hear a baby sigh, someone hum a wordless tune, your hands rough, your legs strong, owning nothing but what you can carry. And yet it is enough, because tonight you are warm, you are safe, and now it's time to rest, to let the fire fade, the dark wrap around you, and the night gently hold you. Everything is quiet, but not silent. You can hear the distant murmur of life waking up, the rustle of feathers, the slow call of some bird you can't name, its sound rising and falling like a breath. No traffic, no voices, just the earth. Exhaling, the sun is just now stretching its arms across the land, golden and low, its rays still soft, not yet sharp or hot. You are standing near the edge of a small clearing. Tall trees surround you, some bent with age, others young and thin, their branches trembling lightly with morning dew. The air is cool on your skin, but not biting. It smells fresh, like leaves crushed underfoot, damp moss and cold stone still holding the memory of night. And just ahead of you, hidden behind the brush and roots, is a cave, but not a frightening cave, not the kind full of dripping echoes and unseen creatures. This one is small, shallow, familiar. It faces the east, and so the rising sun has already begun to slip inside, casting light over the curved walls. The outside is rough stone, patched with lichen and claw marks from long ago. The inside is warmer, smoother in places, where hands have rubbed it over time. You might even notice a few charcoal marks, childish drawings, old symbols, a red streak here, a handprint there, stories, perhaps, or warnings, or just moments remembered in dust inside. The family stirs. Not a large family, just a handful of people. A small band, 6, maybe 7 in all. There's the old woman with white hair like wool, sleeping with her back against the cave wall. She doesn't wake quickly. She never does, but her breathing is steady, strong. Next to her is a young boy, curled tightly in a bundle of hide and fur. He's dreaming still. His small hands twitch now and then. Maybe he's chasing something in his sleep, or maybe he's remembering a day of running through the fields, closer to the entrance. A man is already awake. He's squatting near the fire pit, just a circle of blackened stones. The fire has burned low in the night, but not out. With practiced hands, he nudges the coals, adds a dry piece of bark, blows gently. A soft flame returns. It hisses faintly, like it's sighing back to life. He doesn't speak. There's no need. Everyone knows the rhythm here. Mornings are slow, quiet, deliberate. A woman, maybe the boy's mother, sits up and stretches. Her hair is long and tangled, but her movements are calm, almost graceful. She blinks against the sunlight, then leans forward to rub her feet, cracked and hard from walking barefoot. She glances at the fire, at the man. No words, just a soft nod. Outside the cave, the mist is thinning. The trees are beginning to shift as small birds hop from branch to branch, singing in that strange, beautiful way. Songs without language, just sound, just presence. You can hear the distant trickle of a stream. It's not far. Just past the trees, where the land dips into a gentle slope. They'll go there later, to drink, to wash, maybe to see if any fish got caught in the shallows overnight. But for now, they stay close. The family eats slowly, if there's food to eat. Last night's fire-roasted roots, maybe a bit of dried meat shared in small bites, passed from hand to hand. They sit in a loose circle, legs crossed or stretched out, shoulders touching. No rush, no plan. Only the rising of the sun, and the knowledge that soon they'll have to move again, or not. Maybe today is a good day to stay, because in this world, there are no calendars, no deadlines, no alarms. Time flows like the wind through the grass, unseen, but always there, guiding you. Moving you forward, the family begins to stir more now. The boy wakes, eyes blinking in the strange morning light. He yawns, then crawls into his mother's lap. She holds him without thinking, pressing her nose into his hair, as if memorizing the smell of her child for the 1,000th time. The man at the fire stands. He steps outside the cave, scanning the tree line. He is not tense, but alert, because the world out there is not tame. There are wolves, bears, other humans, sometimes with hungrier eyes, but for now, nothing stirs except the birds. And so he breathes deep, relaxes. You watch him walk a little further into the clearing. His feet crunch softly against the ground. Dry leaves, broken twigs. He crouches, presses a hand into the soil, still damp from last night's rain. Still good for walking, good for tracking too. He stands again, and for a long while, he just watches the horizon, as if listening for something more than sound, as if the land itself might tell him what kind of day it will be. Back in the cave, the others have begun their own small tasks. The older woman hums softly as she fingers a strip of hide, tightening a binding on her sandal. The young boy plays with a pebble, scraping it gently against the wall, tracing shapes with no purpose but curiosity. The fire crackles. A small bird hops into the cave entrance for a moment, then flutters away. The family is awake now, but they are not busy. They are simply alive. They didn't have beds, of course, just piles of dried grass, moss, and animal skins, soft enough to sleep on. And warm, they slept close together. Body heat was everything in this cold, vast world. Fires burned low in the night, but someone always stayed half awake, feeding it a stick or two, keeping the flames alive against the chill. There was no alarm clock here, no buzzing or ringing to pull you from sleep. Only the light and the cold when the sun rose and the birds started calling. Slowly, gently, it was time to begin the day. The toddler stirs softly, his small fingers clutching at a worn piece of fur. He blinks slowly, taking in the dim light filtering into the cave. His breath is steady, calm, safe here, surrounded by warmth and quiet. Nearby, a teenager yawns and stretches, the long muscles of youth unfolding after the stillness of sleep. She leans against a stone wall, her eyes tracing the charcoal marks left by those who came before. Perhaps stories told without words, etched into stone for those patient enough to see, the older adults share a glance. Brief, meaningful. No need for loud voices here. Their lives are tied to the rhythm of the land. Each movement measured, deliberate, outside. The wind shifts gently, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth into the cave. It brushes past the family, whispering secrets only they can understand. The fire flickers again, its soft glow casting dancing shadows on the rough walls. In these quiet moments, there is peace, a fragile peace, held tenderly between them. And you, here with them, are a part of this ancient world, a world that waits patiently. As you sink deeper into rest, now the question becomes, what to eat? There is no pantry, no storage room, no grocery list on the fridge. What you eat today depends on what you found yesterday, this morning. There's a small pile of leftover roasted roots, something like yams, but tougher, earthier. They're shared evenly, a few bites for each person, soft, warm, and smoky. There's also a rabbit leg, dried from yesterday's hunt. It's chewy, salty, and fibrous. They tear it with their teeth, not knives. Nearby, a woven pouch holds berries. Some are sour, some sweet. They've learned, carefully, what's safe, trial, and error. Taught the hard way, the simple breakfast is eaten slowly. No rush, no distractions, just the quiet crackle of the fire and the gentle morning sounds around them. Soon, we'll move with them as they prepare to leave the cave and step into the wide, wild world. Everything they need comes from the forest, the plains, the riverbanks. If they want honey, they need to climb trees and brave the bees. If they want eggs, they must watch carefully where the birds nest. Nuts have to be cracked open with rocks. Leaves must be tasted slowly and carefully. Some are healing, some are poison, mushrooms. Dangerous territory. Only the very experienced know which are safe. The entire world is their kitchen. But there's no recipe book, only memory, passed down. In whispers and gestures, next, we'll follow their slow journey beyond the cave, stepping deeper into the wild world that surrounds them. Let's drift back to the cave. It's late morning now. The sun has climbed higher, warming the earth and lifting the morning chill. Shadows stretch long and soft behind every tree, reaching lazily across the ground as if reluctant to leave. The early rush, the gathering, the fire-making, the searching for food is over for now. And so we arrive at the quiet part of the day, the long, slow hours, the time between movement and rest. What we might call midday or afternoon. But cavemen, they had no word for it. It was simply the middle of life's rhythm. A time to pause, to breathe, to simply be. The world moves gently here, soft sounds filling the air, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the slow crackle of embers fading in the fire pit. In this quiet, the family settles, resting muscles, quieting minds, wrapped in the warmth of the day's sun. And you, here with them, feel the stillness seep deep into your bones. In the next part, we'll move with them as the afternoon slowly unfolds. The waiting, the watching, the small moments that make up the longest part of their day. They sit, mostly. They crouch. They lean. No chairs, no benches. just stones, logs, patches of grass, or the cool, firm earth beneath them. The world around them is quiet now, soft and steady, a gentle hum of life in the stillness. One man chips a stone, each tap ringing clear but calm. Tap, 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 a slow, steady rhythm, like the beating of a distant drum. He's making a blade, not because he wants to, but because he must. His old blade cracked last night, sharp edges broken and worn thin by use. Years of carving have etched a deep line into the skin of his thumb, a small scar of patience and necessity. Nearby, a young girl picks dried bark from a weathered tree stump. Her fingers are small, nimble, and silent, moving carefully to gather kindling for the fire that will keep them warm tonight. The bark is brittle and light, curling softly in her hands. She doesn't rush. There is no hurry here. Each piece she collects is a promise for the coming darkness. An older woman sits cross-legged, braiding strands of dried grass into cord. She twists one strand over another, over and over again. A motion repeated so many times it feels like part of the earth itself. Her hands move slowly, but with practiced ease, transforming simple grass into something useful, something strong enough to hold and carry. Hours pass like this, slow, patient, quiet. A few birds call softly from the trees. A breeze stirs the leaves, whispering secrets only the forest understands. The fire's glow from earlier is now just a faint memory, but the warmth of the sun still rests on their skin. This is the rhythm of the day. Quiet, patient, simple, but necessary. Soon, the light will begin to soften, and the day will slowly lean into evening, bringing the calm that comes before night. When you live in a world with nothing, everything must be made by hand. So they make, slowly, carefully, with patience born from necessity. They make tools, rough stone blades chipped and sharpened by hand, clothes woven from animal fur and tanned hide, softened by time and wear, ropes twisted from dried grasses and vines, strong enough to bind, to carry, to hold, containers fashioned from bark, woven reeds or animal stomachs, simple vessels for water, seeds and berries, fishing lines spun from sinew, fine and flexible, snares set carefully in the underbrush, waiting silently for a passing animal, needles carved from bone, sharp and slender, used to stitch hides into warm clothing, clubs shaped from heavy wood, rough but sturdy, baskets woven tight with intricate patterns, catching everything from nuts to small fish, hooks crafted from thorn or bone, curved and pointed, ready to pull food from the water. Each object is made not just to use, but to survive. Because survival depends on having what you need, when you need it. And they don't make just one. They make spares, then spares for the spares. Because things break. Everything breaks eventually. Stone chips, ropes fray, bones snap. Even the strongest hide wears thin, so they make again and again, each piece a quiet promise, a thread woven into the fabric of life itself. Next, we will see how these tools and objects shape their days, how the act of making becomes part of the rhythm of survival. Not everything is practical. Sometimes, a young boy finds a round, smooth stone in the river. He turns it over slowly in his palm, feeling its cool, heavy weight. It fits just right, like it was made for his hand. He shows it to his sister. She shrugs lightly, holding up a shell she found, curled and colorful, brighter than any stone. Their father glances at them, a faint smile touching his lips. Just barely. There are no toys here. No books to open, no pictures to look at, no songs sung just for fun. But still, they find beauty in smooth rocks worn by water and time, in feathers bright and soft, picked from a fallen bird, in bones with strange, twisting shapes, remnants of creatures that once roamed. The girl carefully traces the edge of her shell with a finger, noticing the tiny ridges and swirls. She tucks it safely into a woven pouch, a small treasure to hold close. The boy rolls his stone between his palms again, watching how the sunlight glints off its surface. It feels steady, grounding, something to remind him of the river's cool flow long after he has left its banks. At night, they lay these treasures by the fire, placing stones and feathers side by side. The flickering flames cast long shadows, turning ordinary objects into glowing shapes, alive with light and mystery. Sometimes the family gathers around these small treasures, touching them, passing them quietly from hand to hand, sharing stories without words. These simple objects hold memories of places they've been, of moments they've shared, of the endless beauty hidden in the smallest things. And in this way, even without toys or books, without paintings or music as we know them, their world is filled with wonder. Small wonders that fill the slow hours and warm the quiet nights. Next, we will follow them as the day begins to wind down, and the firelight invites stories and rest. They have no list, no to-do board, no goals written down or planned, but their minds are sharp, trained by years of instinct, by the steady repetition of survival. Every day, certain things must be done. Someone must watch the fire, keep the flames alive, warm and steady. Someone must guard the cave mouth, eyes alert for danger, ready to warn. Someone must carve the points of spears, shaping stone and bone into sharp tools for hunting. Someone must crack bones for marrow, a precious, nourishing gift hidden inside. Someone must dry meat, cutting it thin, stringing it up so it lasts through long days without fresh food. Someone must scrape hides, removing flesh and fat to make warm clothing. Someone must collect water, a vital, life-giving task that requires patience and care. The tasks may seem small, simple steps in a daily dance, but they matter. A missed fire could mean a frozen night, cold and dangerous without warmth. A rotted hide could ruin clothing, leaving skin exposed to wind and rain. Spilled water? They'd need to walk for an hour or more to find more from the river or spring. So they do the tasks, over and over, until they become muscle memory, a rhythm carried in the bones, a dance performed without thought. And as these tasks continue, the day moves quietly forward, each moment blending softly into the next. When there's no screen to stare at, no paper to read, no clock to check, you learn to watch the world. They sit quietly, still as the earth beneath them, letting their eyes drift across the endless sky. They watch the clouds, sometimes soft and drifting, like cotton stretched across the blue, sometimes dark and heavy, slowly rolling like distant waves on an unseen ocean. They watch the wind in the grass, how it bends and sways, whispering secrets in the rustling blades, telling stories of faraway storms or gentle rains. A hawk circles overhead, its sharp eyes scanning the ground below, wings steady and wide, carving lazy circles in the vast sky. They learn the language of nature, patterns woven into every movement and sound. Birds fly differently when a predator is near. Their flight quickens, sudden, sharp, a flurry of wings breaking the calm air. Insects hum louder when the rain is coming, their buzzing rising, a steady crescendo that fills the air with warning. A shifting shadow among the trees, a flicker of movement caught from the corner of an eye. Might be a boar rooting through underbrush, or something far more dangerous, a wolf or a lurking predator. Their eyes are always moving, scanning, searching, reading the subtle signs the world gives. Their ears are always open, catching the slightest crack of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a creature unknown. Even when they rest, their bodies remain alert, muscles tensed, senses sharp. Rest is never complete surrender, but a quiet readiness. In this way, they are part of the world, not separate from it, but woven into the great web of life. The landscape is their classroom, the sky their book, the wind their teacher. And you too can feel this quiet connection, watching, listening, breathing with the world around you. They don't make new things unless they absolutely have to. Instead, they fix. A broken spear? They bind it tighter, wrapping strips of sinew, pulling the wood and stone close again until it's strong enough for another hunt. A torn pouch? Stitched carefully with dried sinew and a sharp bone needle, each tiny stitch pulling the edges close, mending what was broken. A cracked bowl made from bark? They press it firmly with sticky resin, holding the pieces together like glue made by the earth itself. Shoes, if they even have them, are patched with scraps of hide, rough patches sewn or tied where the leather has worn thin. Clothes? Animal skins, often rough and stiff, sometimes softened by pounding or chewing. They stitch them with gut and tie them with cord made from plants or sinew. Nothing fancy, no fine seams or delicate threads, just enough to cover their skin, to protect them from cold, from thorns and scratches, from the relentless sun. Repairs are part of life, constant, quiet, a soft rhythm that hums beneath their days, done by the old or the still, by those who cannot hunt or gather, but who hold the wisdom and skill to keep the tribe whole. Each stitch, each patch, each binding, a small act of care, a thread connecting past to future, life to survival. And as they repair, life moves on. The day continues its slow dance, carrying them forward through time and tide. It's not glamorous. Gnats hover in thick, buzzing clouds, dancing endlessly around faces and hands. Mosquitoes bite constantly, tiny, sharp pinpricks that sting and itch long after they're gone. There's no repellent, no sprays or lotions to keep them away. So they swat lazily, hands moving slow and tired through the air. They scratch without thinking, fingers wandering across arms and necks, finding spots that itch deep beneath the skin. The youngest smear cool mud on their arms, hoping it might dull the itch a little. It helps sometimes, but only just enough. Ticks are picked off carefully, one by one, tiny threats clinging tightly to skin and hair. Fleas in the bedding are crushed quietly between thumbnails. Small battles fought and won without fanfare. Lice? They live in the hair, a fact of life no one escapes. Hygiene exists here, but it's different from what you might expect. Bathing means dipping into cold rivers, letting the current wash away the day's dust and sweat. Scrubbing is done with rough sand or ash, natural cleansers, harsh but effective. They are not filthy, not dirty in the way we imagine. They carry the wild with them, every speck of dust, every tiny creature, a reminder that they belong to this world. The itch, the bite, the small annoyances, these are part of life's texture, woven into the slow rhythm of survival. Soon, we will move with them as they continue to live closely with nature, feeling every small detail, every gentle moment. As the sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across the land, thoughts turn naturally toward the evening meal. You've been resting, wrapped in quiet, letting the slow rhythm of the day settle into your bones. But now, let's gently open the next page of time. You're still with them, the small group of people you've followed since morning. The fire's still warm, and the cave still smells like stone and wood smoke. But what if there was no cave? What then? Not all cavemen lived in caves. In fact, most didn't. Let's wander with them now, step softly through the wild, and learn how they made a home out of nothing but nature itself. First, of course, the cave. When it's there, it's everything. A refuge shaped by nature's hand. Solid rock rising from the earth, offering shelter from wind, rain, and cold. Protection that means life or death. A place to store warmth, a place to keep fire burning through the night, a place to gather, to rest, to feel safe. But not all caves are deep and dark, or wide and spacious. Some are shallow, a simple rock overhang, just enough to block the harsh wind, or keep heavy rain from soaking skin and bedding. They choose carefully. A cave facing south, if possible, so the morning sun can reach inside early, warming stone and skin before the chill fades away. High enough above the ground to avoid floods when storms roar through the land, dry, with no dampness seeping in. And of course, safe, free from the footprints and sharp claws of wolves, bears, or other predators. But caves are rare. Most places don't have them. Sometimes the earth offers no shelter at all, no hollow rock to protect from the elements. When that happens, they must build. From nothing but the gifts of the wild. Branches, leaves, mud, and stones. Structures made slowly, carefully, shaped by hands that know the land. Because shelter is survival. The rain is relentless, falling in sheets or soft drizzles, sometimes pounding on the roof like 1,000 tiny drums. That steady rhythm can soothe or unsettle, depending on how well the shelter holds. Inside, the thick walls of packed earth and woven branches stand strong, their weight steady against the wind's push. The grass and moss not only block water, they trap warmth, holding in the heat from the fire. The air smells smoky but clean, carrying the faint aroma of wet earth outside. Fresh, alive, but dangerous if it finds its way inside. At the entrance, skins flap gently, moving with every breeze, a soft curtain to keep cold drafts away. They lift and lower the flaps carefully, letting fresh air in, but never enough to let the chill seep through. The fire crackles low, its light flickering on the rough walls. Around it, they huddle close, faces glowing in the amber glow, sharing warmth that spreads deeper than skin. In this shelter there is safety, there is rest, but always the rain reminds them. They must be vigilant. A hole could let water in, a torn flap could let cold creep through. So every day, every moment, they check and repair, tighten and patch. Their homes are fragile, but they fight to keep them strong. Because here, dry means life. Winter is brutal. In colder regions where the wind howls like a wild animal and snow blankets the earth in endless white, they seek shelter underground. They dig shallow pits, soft hollows carved from frozen earth, deep enough to escape the biting cold. These pits are lined carefully with sticks, woven tightly together like a fragile fence against the dark. Then, they cover the pit with hides and thatch, layers thick and heavy, shielding against the wind's fierce bite. The opening is small, just enough for a person to crawl inside, a tight door against the storm. Inside, silence. A hush that presses close, broken only by the faint crackle of a smoldering fire. The family sleeps close, bodies pressed together for warmth, shared heat against the cold that tries to creep in. Furs line every surface, soft and heavy, muffling sound and holding in the precious heat. Nothing moves, nothing speaks. The world outside rages with ice and storm. They wait out the storms, hours, days, weeks, huddled in quiet endurance. It's not comfort, not warmth like a soft bed or a cozy room, but it is survival. Slow, steady, patient survival. Shelters had to be safe, but the forest was full of danger. Sometimes, a bear would find the cave, drawn by the scent of food or warmth, its heavy footsteps shaking the earth, its breath fogging the cold air. Or a pack of hyenas, their eerie howls cutting through the night, eyes gleaming like small fires in the dark. Or worse, another group of humans, not friendly visitors, but rivals competing for the same land, the same food, the same survival. There were no locks, no doors made of iron or wood, only watchfulness. They might block the entrance with stones, quiet barriers to slow a curious or hungry visitor. They'd hide their firelight with branches, darkness masking their presence, making them harder to find. Some chose to sleep in trees, high above the ground, safe in the tangled branches. Wrapped in furs, tied in with vines, they swayed gently in the wind, protected by height and distance. Anywhere was safer than the open. Every step taken, every breath held, carried the weight of danger and the desperate hope for another day. There were no shelves, no closets, no rooms lined with cupboards or drawers, but they had ways to store. Flat stones became rough tables, places to set things carefully so they wouldn't get lost. Holes chipped into the cave walls turned into cubbies. Small pockets carved by hand, holding whatever they needed close but out of reach of crawling insects. Animal bladders, dried and cleaned, were used as containers for water. Flexible, light, and surprisingly strong. Baskets woven from reeds and grasses held berries, fragile and precious, ready to be eaten slowly or shared. Skins wrapped tightly around dried meat, keeping it safe from moisture and scavengers. Hollowed-out logs served as natural boxes, cradling fish bones, tools, or small treasures found along the way. Everything was kept off the ground, a vital step to keep food and supplies away from bugs, rodents, or other curious creatures. A simple shelf made from forked sticks, woven together with vines or sinew, might hold their sharpest tools, ready for the next hunt or craft. They didn't hoard. There was no room for greed in their world. But they kept what they needed. Every piece mattered. Because in their world, to have nothing was to risk death. Yes, the floor was dirt. But they swept it, gently, with bundles of branches pushing dust and debris to the edges, keeping the space tidy in their own way. Ash was carefully pushed aside, collected from the fire pit, so it wouldn't spread and choke the air. Bones were buried deep in the earth, or tossed far from camp, far enough to keep the living safe from the smell and pests. Old food scraps were fed to animals, scavengers and helpers alike, or burned to ash, leaving no trace behind. Water was carried in daily, fresh and clear, bringing life to their home. Fur bedding was aired out in the sun, fluffed by hands and beaten gently with sticks, cleaned from dirt and tiny pests. They didn't understand germs, not like we do now, but they knew this. Clean meant healthy. Rot meant danger. And so, they cleaned. Every day. Quietly. Naturally. This was their way. A slow, steady rhythm of care, woven into the fabric of their lives. Over time, the shelter becomes more than just sticks and grass. It holds warmth, the heat from fires that flicker and dance, wrapping the space in a soft glow. It holds smells, smoke and earth, cooked roots and drying hides, the sharp scent of wild herbs. It holds sounds, the cry of a baby waking from sleep, the crack of a bone splitting in half, the cough of an elder fighting winter's chill. These huts, these caves, they hold life, and they hold death. When someone dies, sometimes they bury them nearby. Soft earth gently covering bones and memories. Sometimes, in the cave itself, a quiet place to rest close to those they loved. They leave offerings, simple things, tools worn from use, shells smoothed by water, stone beads carved carefully by hand. A silent goodbye, a last gift to honor the journey beyond. Then they pack up and walk on. Because the world is wide, and the path never ends. The world is quiet again. The fire crackles softly, tiny sparks rising like slow dancers into the night air. The stars above you are silent and slow, glittering far beyond, timeless and distant. You're lying near the mouth of the cave, wrapped in warmth, wrapped in stillness. The night air is cool against your skin, but the fire's gentle heat keeps the chill at bay. Around you, the quiet breaths of the group mingle, the steady rise and fall of sleep, soft whispers in the dark. But beneath that calm, your stomach growls, a deep, natural reminder. It's time to talk about food. Because in this ancient world, food is more than fuel. It's survival, it's comfort, it's connection. Without it, there is no strength to hunt, to build, to protect. No warmth to share by the fire. And gathering it, hunting it, is a story all its own. In the world of early humans, there were no meal times, no breakfast at 8, no lunch at noon, no dinner bell ringing through the camp. There was only this. Am I hungry? Is there something to eat? If yes, eat. If no, wait. Sometimes they ate twice a day, a rare treat shared around the fire. Sometimes once, a quick handful of berries or roasted roots. Sometimes, not at all. Hunger was a quiet, constant companion, a reminder of the fragile balance between life and survival. They didn't count hours or minutes. They counted what the land gave them and what the hunt could bring. And so they lived, sometimes full, sometimes empty, always moving forward. Before the hunt, there was the gather. Every morning just after dawn, when the air was still cool and fresh, women and children slipped quietly from the camp, their footsteps soft on the earth, their eyes sharp and watchful. They moved slowly through the forest edge, through tangled underbrush and tall grasses, searching for nature's hidden gifts. They knew what to look for, the forest's scattered treasures, waiting patiently to be found. Berries, bright and heavy with juice, hung low on thorny bushes, deep red, purple, or blue, each one a burst of sweet and sour on the tongue. Nuts, tucked beneath fallen leaves or buried in soft soil, hard-shelled and waiting to be cracked open, a feast of rich fats and protein. Leaves, too, some tender and green, carrying healing powers, while others were sharp or bitter, teaching lessons with every taste. Tubers and roots, hidden beneath layers of earth, the forest's secret stores of energy. They dug carefully with sticks, loosened soil, gently lifted the dirt away, unearthing these treasures with patient hands. And mushrooms, a world all their own, full of mystery and danger. Only the wise and cautious knew which were safe, which to avoid. A bright red mushroom with white spots, a deadly trap. A small brown one nestled in a fallen log, perhaps safe, but always tasted with care and hesitation. They learned from trial and error, from sickness that followed a wrong bite, from memory etched deeply in their minds and passed down in quiet stories and gestures. The forest was their kitchen, a place of abundance and risk, a source of life and a test. They moved slowly, methodically, gathering enough to feed the group, but never more than they needed. Each step was careful, each hand deliberate. They knew the balance. Take too much, and the forest would give less next time. Take too little, and hunger would follow. So they lived with respect for the land, for the life it held, for the delicate rhythm of giving and receiving. The morning light shifted. Birds called overhead, and the forest whispered around them, alive with secrets. And as they gathered, they learned how to survive, how to thrive, how to live with the wild. Some days were lucky. A bird's nest tucked carefully in a hollow tree, hidden high above the ground. 3 white eggs, smooth and still warm, gifts of new life waiting to be gathered. Careful hands reached in quietly, so as not to disturb the mother's watchful eyes. Eggs were a rare treasure, full of rich nourishment, easy to carry, and quick to eat. Then there was the buzzing hive, high in the twisting branches of an ancient tree, packed with golden honey, sweet and sticky, if they dared disturb it. The risk was great. Angry bees swarmed and stung, but the reward was sweeter still. Honey was liquid gold, a burst of energy and warmth, a taste unlike any other in their world. Sometimes they found a fallen log, rotten inside and crawling with fat white grubs, soft and wriggling. Strange to us, perhaps, but full of fat and protein, easy to catch without weapons. These small things, eggs, honey, grubs, were prized beyond measure. They were gifts from the wild, tiny bursts of energy in a hard life. And when the land offered these delicacies, the group gathered close, sharing quietly, grateful for the moment of plenty. Then there was the other half of eating, the dangerous half, the hunt. It started slow, a quiet, careful ritual. They watched the wind, not just its direction, but its strength and whispers. They moved silently, feet barely pressing the earth, breath steady and low. Eyes scanned the ground, looking for tracks left in soft mud or dirt, droppings that told stories of passing animals, broken grass bent by hooves or paws. They didn't always go for the big animals. A deer was risky, fast, alert, and strong. A mammoth? Almost impossible for a small group without weapons or luck. Instead, they hunted what was easier. Rabbits darting through underbrush, small rodents scurrying near the roots, birds roosting unaware in low branches. Sometimes, fish, caught with sharpened sticks or woven traps, waiting patiently by the river's edge. Anything they could sneak up on, anything that didn't fight back fiercely. The hunt was not just a chase, it was a dance with nature, a test of patience, skill, and knowledge. They knew the land, the habits of animals, the signs left behind. And when they moved as one, quiet, alert, and swift, they could bring home the food that meant survival. Their weapons were simple, nothing like the sharp steel or powerful bows of later times. A sharpened stick, a pointed branch carved carefully with stone, light enough to throw, strong enough to pierce. A heavy rock, used for crushing, bludgeoning, or throwing, shaped by countless strikes of harder stones. A stone-tipped spear, a long wooden shaft with a jagged flint point, tied with sinew or twisted grass, ready to fly or thrust. Sometimes, a trap, a pit dug in the earth, hidden with leaves and twigs, lined with sharpened spikes made from branches, waiting quietly for unsuspecting prey. Or a snare made from twisted grass or animal sinew, set along a game trail, left for days, patient and silent. But most hunting was close, personal, chasing through the brush, throwing spears or rocks with hope and skill, waiting silently behind a tree or rock, hoping and missing. They missed a lot. The wild was unpredictable, fast and clever. But every miss was a lesson, a step closer to understanding. And every throw, every stalk, every breath held brought them closer to the next chance. When they succeeded, it was a big moment. The animal fell. A sudden crash in the underbrush, maybe a cry, sharp, brief, a twitch of legs, blood blooming dark and bright on the earth. They moved fast, not rushing blindly, but with purpose. Others joined quickly, gathering close with careful hands. They thanked it, somehow. Not with words, but with presence, a quiet respect, a shared understanding. This life given, this gift from the wild. Then the work began. The body was heavy, larger than any one person could carry. Dragging it home was hard, and so they often cleaned it right there, under the open sky, surrounded by the forest's quiet watch. Stone blades, sharp and chipped, sliced through thick hide and tough muscles. Careful hands cut away what could be eaten, separating flesh from bone, removing organs with practiced skill. Bones snapped with a sharp crack, opened to reach the rich marrow inside, a hidden treasure of fat and nutrition. Nothing was wasted, not a scrap. Even the intestines were saved, cleaned and rinsed, twisted into strong, flexible string. The skin was carried home, hung to dry in the sun and wind, then softened and shaped into clothing and shelter. The meat, sometimes raw and steaming, sometimes carefully wrapped in leaves, was shared among the group, a feast of survival and togetherness. Some carried their bounty back, packed into woven bags or animal hides, ready for the next fire, the next meal. Fire changed everything. Before fire, they chewed raw meat, tough, bloody, and risky, biting into muscles and sinew that tested their jaws. But with fire, it became soft, warm, safe. They cooked over open flames, holding strips of meat carefully on sharpened sticks, turning slowly as the heat wrapped around it. Sometimes they roasted small animals whole, the skin crisping, the inside tenderizing, filling the air with smoky, rich scents. Other times they dug a pit, heated stones red hot within, then placed food on the stones, covered it with leaves and earth, letting it steam slowly, hidden beneath the soil. They didn't season. There was no salt shaker or spices. But the smoke, thick, swirling, and fragrant, gave flavor. It was more than survival. It was a taste of life, a warmth that spread from the fire into their bodies and souls. Still, their food wasn't flavorless. They discovered gifts from the earth. Wild garlic growing near riverbanks, onions tucked beneath loose soil, peppery roots with sharp bites, and minty leaves that cooled the tongue. not for every meal, just now and then, when the land offered something special. Some leaves soothed aching stomachs, calming discomfort with gentle touch. Others, they learned the hard way, made things worse, causing sickness or burning the throat. They learned which to use, which to burn for smoke, which to avoid at all costs. It wasn't gourmet, no fancy recipes or herbs from faraway lands, but it was survival food. Simple, savory. Enough. Enough to keep them strong, enough to keep them moving forward day by day. Without refrigerators, storage was limited. They dried meat in the sun, laying thin strips across flat stones or woven mats, letting the heat slowly pull moisture away. They smoked it over the fire, hanging strips or whole pieces above glowing embers, the thick smoke curling around, helping preserve and flavor the meat at once. Sometimes they hung their food from high branches, out of reach of scavengers and animals, safe in the open air, swaying gently with the wind. Other times they buried it, wrapped carefully in animal hide, sealed within bark containers, hidden in cool, dark places beneath the earth. This preserved food could last a few days, maybe a week. They didn't store for months or plan for seasons far ahead. They lived week to week, day to day, always watching the food pile, always preparing for hunger's return, because in this world, food was never guaranteed. It was precious, fragile, and every bite counted. When they did eat, they ate together. Food was shared, evenly. No one took more than their share. No one ate alone. The elders, the children, the hunters, the gatherers, all sat close, passing food from hand to hand, a quiet ceremony of trust and survival. This sharing built bonds, trust that held the group tight. It kept peace, for in a harsh world, cooperation was everything. A good meal meant one more day survived, one more sunrise. Over time, they learned more. How to grind seeds into coarse flour, using rough stones worn smooth by countless strokes. How to bake flat cakes on hot stones, pressing dough made from crushed roots and grains, cooked slowly over embers. How to boil water in animal skin bags, plunging heated stones into the water, making warmth and softness out of cold and hard. They soaked bitter roots to remove poisons, mashed wild berries into sticky pastes, learning with every bite, every test. These were the first recipes, not written in books, but held in memory and passed down through touch and taste. Every region had its own flavor. Near the sea, shellfish clinging to rocks, seaweed drifting in tides, fish with sharp bones, careful to eat without injury. In the desert, cactus fruit bursting with moisture, insects rich with protein, lizards caught in the heat. In the tundra, frozen meat kept cold by the snow, boiled bones for marrow, seal fat to keep warmth through the endless cold. Food was always local, because they could only eat what the land gave. No trade ships brought spices from afar, no markets full of distant flavors, just the earth beneath their feet. But not every day was full. Sometimes traps came up empty. Sometimes rain washed away the plants they depended on. Sometimes herds moved on, leaving empty trails and hungry mouths. And hunger crept in. They ate bark, chewed grass, drank boiled bone water. Sometimes they didn't eat at all. A day, 2 days, more. Hunger was always close, a shadow lurking just beyond the firelight. They learned to endure it, to survive without. But it left a mark, and that's why. When the food did come, it was special. A piece of meat roasted by the fire, a fresh egg, still warm from the nest, a fat, slow lizard caught by surprise. They didn't feast, they didn't celebrate. No grand ceremonies, but they felt it. The warmth, the safety, the full belly, the small joy of not being hungry, and that was enough. And so night falls once more. The fire glows softly. Smoke curls upward, twisting into the dark sky. They lie back, bellies filled, faces tired. No lights, no noise, just the sounds of chewing and breathing. And above them, the stars. Silent, eternal. Watching over this ancient dinner table. Imagine your hands empty. No phone to scroll through. No spoon to lift food to your lips. No pen to write words or draw pictures. No lighter to spark a flame. No knife to cut or carve. Nothing. Just your hands, your fingers, your skin. Now imagine living that way. No tools, no gadgets, no shortcuts. This is where they began. The very first people, the earliest humans, holding nothing in their hands, but everything in their mind. Their minds sharp, eyes alert, hearts steady. And so they shaped the world. Not with force, not with speed, but slowly, patiently. One chip of stone at a time, each strike deliberate, each flake falling away, revealing something new, a sharper edge, a stronger blade, a better way to survive. From those simple beginnings came tools, weapons, clothing, and shelter. From empty hands came creativity. From quiet minds came innovation. They learned to shape their lives, to bend the wild world to their will, step by step, day by day. They weren't born with power, they built it. And with each small success, a spear, a fire, a woven basket, they took one more step away from the emptiness. They carried everything forward, not in their hands, but in their memories, their stories, their touch. This is the story of beginnings, of survival, of the slow, patient shaping of a world that was once wild, now made a little more their own. The very first tools were simple, but not stupid. A sharp rock, picked up from the ground, tested against bark and bone, its jagged edge catching light. A broken bone, snapped and shaped, its point used to dig or prod. A stick with a point, carved roughly, made sharper with repeated biting and scraping. They didn't invent tools all at once. No sudden eureka moment. No blueprint laid out on a table. They discovered them, bit by bit. Each tool born from necessity, from hunger, from pain. A branch didn't cut meat. It bruised the hand. It snapped too easily. A dull stone crushed a finger. It failed to pierce or scrape. So they tried again, over and over. Trial, error, instinct. They watched how rocks broke, the way flakes chipped off, creating new edges. They learned which stones made better blades, flint, obsidian, quartz. They held the tools in their hands, feeling their weight, testing their balance, and slowly, over years and generations, they became tool makers, creators, makers of their own fate.
With each new tool, they changed their world, making tasks easier, survival more possible. But not just any rock. They learned to search for flint, smooth, glassy, breakable, or obsidian if they were lucky, sharp as glass, deadly, fragile. They held one in each hand, struck them together at just the right angle. Tap, tap, crack. A flake falls off. Flat, thin, razor sharp. They pick it up, feel the edge. Blood from a fingertip? That's how they know it works. The first knife is born. They shape flakes into blades, then use other rocks to grind the edge sharper, to notch it, to give it a curve. Not pretty, not perfect, but deadly. These blades could cut hide, carve meat, shape wood, skin a rabbit, scrape bark. Tools became part of their body, an extension of their hand, an extension of survival. A sharp rock by itself is useful, but a rock tied to a stick? Now that is a tool. They tied blades onto wooden shafts using sinew, the tough fibers from animal tendons. They soaked it, wrapped it, let it dry. and it shrank tight like glue. Sometimes they used vines, or strips of hide, or even sticky sap. They invented bindings long before glue, long before nails. Let your mind wander through their world. Their toolkit was basic but surprisingly rich. Hand axes, tear-shaped stones chipped on both sides. Scrapers, broad, flat flakes used to clean hides. Awls, pointed bones for punching holes in leather. Burins, tiny tools for carving fine lines. Hammerstones, round rocks to smash and crack. Spears, sharpened wood, sometimes tipped with stone. Digging sticks, thick branches charred at the tip for strength. Every object had a purpose. Every edge meant something. They didn't waste effort. To make a tool, you need imagination. To see a blade in a rock. To know that stick plus stone plus string equals axe. To plan ahead. To test. To fail. These were the earliest engineers. The earliest designers. They weren't dumb. They were deliberate. The slowness of their world made them clever. Eventually, they improved. They made spears that could fly, thrown with an arm or a spear thrower, a long stick that added power and distance. With time, they made bows, a curved branch, a string of gut, sharpened arrows, fletched with feathers. This came later, but once it arrived, it changed everything. No longer face to face with danger. Now they could kill from the shadows. Bone tools and antler creations. Bones weren't just leftovers. They became tools too. Long leg bones were carved into needles.
Thin, strong, sharp. Rib bones were polished into knives. Jawbones became scrapers. Antlers were turned into picks and clubs. Some were engraved, not for function, but for feeling. Even then, they felt something when they carved. Wood was everywhere. It burned, it built, it became tools. They shaped clubs, bowls, spear shafts. They didn't saw. They burned and scraped. They'd char the end of a stick in fire, then grind it against stone until it became a point. It took hours, but they had time. They didn't leave tools behind. They carried them in satchels made of hide, wrapped in bark, hung from sticks. A stone axe might be carried for years, passed from father to son, sharpened again and again, named even, because that tool was the difference between warmth and cold, between meat and hunger, between life and the other thing. Sometimes a tool had marks, a carved line, a notch, a small dot. Was it decoration or something more? A record of kills, a way to grip, a story? We don't know. But we do know this. Even their tools had soul. Tools didn't stop. They got better, sharper, smarter. They made handles, grooves, hooks. They learned to shape heat, to control pressure, to improve. Invention wasn't sudden. It was slow. So slow you'd miss it if you blinked. But it happened, and it brought them forward, stone by stone. Now the sun fades. They set down the axe, blow dust from the blade, stretch sore fingers, wrap it carefully in hide, and place it near the fire. A child picks it up, feels the edge, imagines a hunt. The tools stay, the hands change, and across the ages their sharp edges whisper, "This is how we made it." They did not live alone, not as strangers wandering in a vast, empty world. They lived as groups, small groups, usually between 10 and 30 people. Sometimes families, parents, children, grandparents, all sharing the same shelter, the same fire, the same stories. Other times bands, friends, allies, neighbors, joined for safety, for strength, for survival. They relied on each other. Each person had a role. Each person had a place. The hunters, the gatherers, the elders, the children, everyone mattered. They shared food, warmth, work, and watchfulness. When one fell, others helped. When danger came, they stood together. This was more than survival. It was belonging. A family was not just who you were born to. It was who stood by you in the cold. It was who shared the firelight. Together they shaped the world. Birth was a secret. Mostly women helped women. Quiet voices, gentle hands. No doctors, no hospitals. Sometimes the mother went alone, away from the cave, into the trees, to give birth. The baby was small, fragile, but life found a way. The first cries echoed. A new member joined the group, for months, sometimes years. The rhythm of feeding was slow and steady, warmth against skin, the soft suckling, a quiet comfort in the wild world. But care didn't stop with the mother. The group shared the work. Women helped women, soothing cries, lifting small bodies, whispering soft sounds. Men watched closely, guarded the little ones with watchful eyes, ready to protect. Infants learned slowly, eyes wide with wonder, hands reaching out, grasping fingers, leaves, the air itself. Their world was new, every sound strange, every shadow curious. They were cradled by many arms, held by many hearts, and the group, their family, kept them safe. Slowly, carefully, their laughter was soft, almost shy, a gentle rhythm in the quiet world. They imitated adults, watching every move with bright eyes, practicing with sticks, pretending they were hunters or gatherers. They made noise with stones, clacking, tapping, exploring sounds. They learned by watching, by trying, by failing. Sometimes they fought, small skirmishes over a stone or a place to sit. Sometimes they cried, a scraped knee or a lost toy, but always they grew. Each day a little stronger, a little wiser, a little closer to the world they would one day shape. The elders taught, not with books, not with written words. Their lessons came softly, in stories told beside the fire, in hands that showed, not just said. In quiet example day after day, they showed how to start a fire, how to strike flint and catch a spark, how to feed the flames without choking them, how to keep the smoke away from the eyes. They taught how to read the land, how to track animals by their prints in the mud, how to notice the broken grass where a deer had passed, how the birds' songs changed with the coming of storms. They shared secrets of the forest, which berries were safe to eat, which leaves could heal a wound, which roots could soothe a fever. When someone was sick or hurt, the elders knew what to do. They used herbs, leaves, roots, and bark, healing with the gifts of nature, gently, carefully with patient hands. Their teaching was slow and steady. No rush, no schedules, just a steady passing of knowledge from one person to the next, like a river flowing through time. Young eyes watched, young hands copied, young hearts remembered. It was not a classroom, but the whole world was their school. Every day was a lesson, every moment a chance to learn. The elders were the keepers of wisdom, the living library of the tribe. Their voices were soft, but their words carried far, because in a world without writing, memory was sacred, and the stories, the knowledge, were the tribe's most precious treasure. They comforted each other. Soft hands held trembling ones when fear crept close. In the dark moments, when shadows felt too large, or the cold pressed hard, they didn't face it alone. They held hands, whispered quiet sounds, offered warmth and calm. Food was shared freely, because hunger was a shared enemy. No one ate alone, no one went without. If someone was hurt, a broken bone, a scratch, a fever, the group stayed close. They did not leave. They tended to wounds, offered gentle touches, and watched through long nights. Even the weak had value. The young, the old, the sick, the slow, all were part of the circle. each person mattered. Not just for work or strength, but for who they were. The group was survival. But more than that, it was belonging. A circle of trust, a web of care, a family in the wild. And together, they faced the endless day. The wind carved lines into skin as surely as time did. Hunger hollowed cheeks, but some spirits endured. Few grew old, but some did. They lived long enough to remember things others forgot. They walked more slowly, leaning on sticks or younger shoulders. Spoke less, but when they spoke, people listened. They needed help to hunt, to gather, to sit by the fire. When death came, it was quiet. A final breath beneath the shelter of stone. A last heartbeat echoing against the cave walls. Sometimes they buried the dead, covering them with earth and memory. Sometimes they left them in the cave, bones laid to rest beside cold ashes. They placed stones at the head and feet, left tools, beads, or a carved figure. A promise that the journey continued. They said goodbye in their own way. A whispered song, a hand on a cooling brow, a story passed on so the dead would not be forgotten. Death was part of life, and life grew from death. The stories, the lessons, the care for the old ones woven into each generation. So when the young grew old, and their steps slowed and they spoke less, the same stones would wait for them. Aging was slow and harsh, but in the circle of stones and stories, no one truly walked alone. Life was a circle. Birth, growth, work, old age, death, and then new life again. Each day was part of the great flow. The cave held memories of laughter, of tears, of moments past. Aging was slow and harsh. The wind carved lines into skin as surely as time did. Few grew old, but some did. They walked more slowly, leaning on sticks or younger shoulders. They spoke less, but their words carried weight. They needed help to hunt, to gather, to tend the fire. When death came, it was quiet, a last breath in the hush of the cave. Sometimes they buried the dead, covering them with stones, tools, or beads. Sometimes they left them in the shadows of the cave walls. They said goodbye in their own way. A touch, a song, a story told to keep the memory alive. Death was part of life, and life grew from death. Stories passed on, wisdom carried forward, the young learning how to care for the old. The cave remembered all, the circle unbroken. Aging, death, new birth, the flow never stopped. And so when the young grew old, and their steps slowed, and they spoke less, the stones would wait for them too. Life was a circle. The cave kept it whole. As night falls, the family gathers. Close, warm, quiet. The old ones sit near the fire, their shadows long on the walls, keepers of memory, whispers of another time. Stories are told without words, a glance, a gesture, a hand tracing shapes in the dust. The young lean in, learning what it means to belong. Hands held, heads rest on the shoulders. The heartbeat of the cave echoes their own. Outside, the wind moves over stone and bone, the same wind that carved lines into old faces. But here, by the embers, there is comfort. And sleep comes gently, a promise that when morning comes, the circle continues. Birth, growth, work, old age, death, and new life again. The cave holds it all, laughter and tears, stories and silence, the warmth of a family, the memory of those who came before. Life was a circle, and in the quiet dark, they dream of another dawn. It's cold, damp. Even in summer, the wind bites. Your skin is bare. The fire helps, but it's not enough. So you wrap yourself in the only thing you have, a hide pulled tight around your shoulders, smoke clinging to hair and skin. The warmth of bodies is your shelter. A family pressed close, sharing breath and heartbeat, each one a barrier against the chill. Outside, the night is alive with the cries of unseen things, wolves, wind, spirits in the dark. Inside, the cave walls hold you. They remember your people. They remember stories scratched in ochre and ash. This was how they survived, by gathering together when the world grew cold, by sharing warmth, food, stories, songs that rose and drifted into the blackness above. This was how they honored the circle. Birth beside embers, old age by the fire, death wrapped in stone. Life flowing forward, like breath rising into the dark. So you sleep, wrapped in hide, dreaming of the hunt, of laughter, of the next dawn when the fire crackles to life again. In the cave, even in the deepest night, life goes on. The earliest clothes weren't stylish. They were survival. Animal skins, scraped clean with sharp stone blades, wrapped around the body, tied with sinew or plant fibers, sometimes stitched with bone needles, a hole at a time, pushing through tough hide by firelight. There were no shirts, no pants, just hides, fur turned inward, leather turned out, to keep the damp and the wind at bay. Rough, heavy, but warm enough to let them live another night when the wind howled through the trees, when snow drifted at the cave's mouth. They shared what they had, a scrap of fur for the child, an extra hide for the old woman who no longer hunted. Every stitch told a story of the animal that gave its skin, of the hands that scraped, tanned, and sewed, of the life kept burning through the bitter dark. In the circle around the fire, these rough clothes were more than covering. They were memory. They were protection. They were proof that together they could survive the cold. And when the flames burned low and the family huddled close, the hides wrapped around them like a promise. Life goes on, even when the wind bites, even when aging is slow and harsh, even when the stories are told without words. In the cave, beneath fur and leather, the warmth of life endures. First, you hunted. You tracked the animal for miles, through rain, through snow, through the cold that bit your bare skin. Then you skinned the animal, cutting carefully with sharp stone blades. You scraped the hide clean, removing every strip of fat and flesh, until only tough skin remained. You soaked it in water, rubbed it with ash or urine to help loosen the fibers. Then came the work that seemed to take forever, stretching it across wooden frames, pulling it tight so it wouldn't shrink, drying it by the fire's edge. You pounded it with stone hammers, breaking the fibers, making it flexible. Sometimes you chewed it. Yes. Chewing softened the leather, made it bend to the shape of the body. A painful task, teeth and gums aching, passed down to the old ones whose hunting days were done. It gave them purpose. It gave the young warmth. It was one more link in the circle, the old shaping the future with their labor, even when their steps slowed, even when they spoke less. The result? A stiff, strong, protective cover. Rough hides that turned the wind, kept the damp from gnawing at bones. Not stylish, but survival. Every hide was a memory of the hunt, a mark of work done together. A promise that, under fur and leather, the family would face the cold as one. So when night fell, and the cave grew quiet, and the fire crackled low, the old ones could rest, wrapped in the warmth they'd helped to make. Part of a cycle that never truly ended. Buttons did not exist. Zippers? Number. There was no metal, no snaps, no seams the way we know them now. They used what they had. Knots tied with sinew, twists of plant fiber or leather cord, bone pins carved with care, sharpened and smoothed by the fire's glow. Clothing was not shaped to fit like ours. It was wrapped around the shoulders, cinched at the waist, adjusted to the body by instinct and need. A hide became a cloak, a blanket, a cradle for a child. A cord became a belt, a tie for a bundle of tools, a fastening for the spear at your back. Nothing was wasted. A scrap of hide too small for a coat might become a pouch for flint, a strip for binding a wound, a patch to mend a tear in another's skin. In the cave's flickering light, these fastenings were more than just knots and pins. They were survival stitched by hand. They held the cold at bay. They gave the old ones warmth, the hunters freedom to run, the children shelter when the wind howled. Every cord, every bone pin, every knot was a quiet promise. We use what we have. We share what we make. We carry each other through the dark. So when you see these rough clothes, fur turned in, leather turned out, remember the ties and wraps that held them together. Simple tools that turned a raw hide into life-saving shelter against the bite of winter. In warm seasons, they wore less, sometimes only a strip of hide tied at the waist, or nothing at all when the sun was kind. Skin darkened under the open sky, browned by sunlight, toughened by wind. Calluses grew thick on feet and hands, protecting them from sharp stones, rough bark, burning sand. Their bodies adapted, strong, lean, and ready to move. The warmth of the season was their blanket. Children often ran barefoot, naked, laughing through the tall grass, mud between their toes, the earth their only garment. Their clothes were the weather, the warm breeze that kissed their backs, the river that washed away the day's sweat, the sun that wrapped them in heat, the soil that marked their skin with life. Nothing was wasted. When the cold returned, hides came back out, knots tied, cords pulled tight, the same old furs softened by many winters. In summer, they lived close to the land. Bare skin, bare feet, bones hardening under the sun, stories whispered in the shade of trees, the promise that the warmth would not last forever. And when night fell and the chill crept in again, they gathered by the fire, wrapping themselves in fur and leather, a circle unbroken from naked child to cloaked elder, each part of the cycle, each part of the cave's memory. They were not dirty. They were earthy. They lived close to the land, and the land left its mark. Smoke in their hair, mud on their feet, the scent of leather, wind, and fire. But they washed. They bathed in rivers, letting the cold water carry away sweat and dust. They scrubbed their skin with handfuls of sand or rough leaves, scouring away the grime of the hunt, the smoke of the fire. Leaves wiped what needed wiping. Ash rubbed into hair helped clean away grease, soaked up oil, left behind the smell of the hearth. There were no perfumes, no soaps in pretty pots. But there was not filth either, just the honest smell of life lived outside, among stone, fur, and flame. They knew the signs when something was wrong. A wound that smelled sour, meat that reeked of rot, water that stank of death. Their noses saved them, a warning when danger crept in, when infection threatened, when sickness could spread through the circle. So they cleaned because they had to, because they understood that staying alive meant staying aware of the body, the wound, the world around them. And when night fell and they gathered close in the cave's dark mouth, they smelled of smoke and hide, but also of water, wind, and the earth that kept them fed. In that world, to be clean was to be part of the land, not separate from it, but belonging to it. A living thread in the endless circle of stone, skin, and survival. Hair was long. It grew wild like the grass beyond the cave, sometimes matted with smoke and ash, sometimes braided with care, woven tight by patient hands. They shaved with sharp stones, flint or obsidian edges scraping close to the skin. Or they let it grow, beards thick and tangled through the seasons. Men wore their beards like the hunters they were, badges of age and endurance. Women tied back their hair, lifting it from their faces as they worked, hands slick with hide or clay. Sometimes they used clay or grease from animal fat to shape their hair, to keep it neat, to keep it out of the wind, to keep the bugs away. They plucked stray hairs with bone tweezers, scraped dirt from under nails with flint blades, combed their hair with fingers or rough sticks. A braid here, a knot there, small acts of order in a wild world. There were no mirrors, no polished glass, only the reflection in still water, a fleeting glimpse of their own face, lined with the wind, shadowed by the fire. But they still cared. Still noticed? A mother smoothing a child's hair by the fire. A young woman braiding her sister's before a hunt. An old man tugging leaves from his beard, laughing at the simple vanity of it. It was survival, but it was also pride, a way to feel human in a world of stone, bone, fur, and flame. A way to belong to each other. And when the fire burned low and sleep crept in, they lay close, hair tangled with fur and hide, a living circle, kept warm by the small, tender ways they cared for themselves and each other. Clothes were function, but also meaning. Some wore beads carved from bone, strung with sinew, seeds rattling softly at the throat, or shells gathered from faraway shores. They painted their faces with clay, red for life, black for mystery, white for spirit. Lines traced across cheeks, dots marked the arms, spirals curled on the chest. Was it for beauty? For ritual? For power? We don't fully know. But they decorated. They carried stories on their skin, marks that set them apart, marks that tied them together. They made art on cave walls, yes, but also on themselves. Their bodies were canvas, moving, breathing, alive. Their shoes were simple, strips of hide tied tight around the foot, sometimes stuffed with dry grass in winter to keep out the bite of snow. Often, they wore nothing at all. Most walked barefoot, skin tough as leather, heels cracked but strong. They felt the earth with every step, the chill of stone, the softness of moss, the sting of frost, the warmth of sun-baked soil. They knew every texture, every hidden thorn, every safe place to tread. Their feet remembered the land, paths worn into the mind, guiding them home long after the sun had set. They rubbed fat on their skin, to guard against the cold, to soften cracked hands, to soothe lips burned by wind. They used herbs on wounds, pressed honey into cuts to keep rot away, dabbed mud on insect bites to calm the itch. They didn't know the why, not in the way we do, but they knew what worked. They shared these secrets, this root for fever, that bark for pain, this bitter leaf to settle the belly. Caring for the body was part of each day, just another way they looked after each other, passing down the knowledge one quiet lesson at a time. At night, they lay down on furs or dry leaves, close to the fire's glow. No pillows, just folded hides under a head, or nothing at all. They curled together, warmth shared from skin to skin, the soft rhythm of breath in the dark. The body rested, the skin healed. The mind drifted into dreams of hunts, of laughter, of the circle unbroken. They woke sore, stiff at dawn's chill, but alive, always alive. There were no fashion trends, no brands to boast, no colors to chase each season, but there was identity. A certain shell worn at the throat, a necklace strung with predators' teeth, a special fur draped over the shoulders. These small things mattered. They spoke in silence. They told stories without words. A hunter's courage, a mother's care, a child's place in the circle. They whispered, "This is who I am. This is who we are." In the dark mouth of the cave, under fur and hide, beneath the smoke and the stars, they lived and died as people, earthy, scarred, beautiful in their own quiet way. And when you stand where they once stood, tracing marks on the stone, holding the tiny beads left behind, remember, life was harsh. But it was theirs, and every knot, every hide, every mark on skin was proof that they belonged to the land, to each other, to the endless circle of being human. The day is ending. Shadows stretch across the earth. The sky glows in deep, dying colors. Orange melting into violet, violet fading into black. The sun slips behind the hills. Another day in the wild world has come to a close. The tools are set aside. Rocks chipped into blades. Spears made of fire-hardened wood, carved bone, worn smooth from hands. They lie now in the dust near the mouth of the cave. Tomorrow they'll be used again, but for now, they rest. The hunt is finished. It was not a good hunt. The wind changed and the deer caught the scent. Feet pounded the forest floor, branches snapped. A chase, but no feast, just silence. The forest kept her children today. Still they found berries and roots and a single bird, small, but enough to share. The food is gone. The fire crackles. Ash drifts upward like spirits in the smoke. Hands once busy now hang still. Bellies are not full, but not empty either. The taste of the bird lingers on the tongue, a sweet memory already fading. Now, it's time to sleep. The little ones curl close. One clutches a dried hide, one sucks a thumb. The mother hums a tune older than words, low, slow, almost lost in the breeze. Outside, stars begin to bloom, 1,000 eyes watching from the black. Somewhere in the distance, wolves sing to the moon. Not close, but not far. A man sits at the edge of the cave, his back to the wall, spear across his lap. His eyes are half closed, but still he watches. Still he listens. He is the last to sleep. The cave is quiet now. Only the fire speaks. Only the night breathes. And in this stillness, you lie down too. Back against stone, the skin of a deer pulled over you, the cold creeping in. But not too much. Because tonight you are safe, not comfortable, not clean, not full, but safe. And in this world, that's everything. Sleep takes you slowly, like mist creeping through the trees, like time slipping through fingers, like the darkness wrapping its arms around you. The day is gone, tomorrow waits. But for now, you sleep. Night in the Stone Age was full, not empty, not silent, but full, of darkness, of quiet, of waiting. Time slows, breathing slows. Thoughts drift, untethered. The world shrank. No forests, no sky, no rivers or plains, only stone, only warmth, only breath. The cave was now their entire universe, a circle of firelight flickering on the stone. Orange, red, gold, colors that danced for no one. The ceiling above was close, closer than the sky ever was. A low dome, ancient and cracked. The smell of smoke clung to the air. The scent of sweat, of skin, of ash. These were the smells of safety. Its walls held them in, thick, unmoving. They had stood for 1,000 storms. Now they stood for this family. A child whimpered in her sleep. The mother stirred, placed a hand over the girl's heart. No words, just a touch. The man at the cave mouth did not sleep. He rarely did. His ears stretched into the dark beyond the fire. He knew the night. Its shadows kept them close. No one wandered at night. even the smallest child knew. Outside was not for footsteps. The shadows had rules. They curled at the edge of light. They whispered against the walls. The cave's corners were deeper than they seemed. Sometimes a child would look too long and imagine something looking back. The fire was their only sun. Its light danced across skin and stone. Its heat kept away the cold and the teeth and the night itself. It was fed not just with wood, but with need. Need for light, need for safety, need for something to hold on to when everything else had vanished into the black. Outside, anything could be waiting. Teeth, claws, eyes that shine without light, things that howl, growl, stalk, things that remember when men were meat. The wind carried sounds the fire could not chase. The crack of a branch, the rustle of leaves, the scream of something dying or hunting. No one spoke of it, but they all heard it. And still, inside it was each other. A baby's breath, a child's sigh, the father's hand resting on a spear, the mother's hum, soft as falling ash. No one was alone. Not here, not now. They had each other, and that, in a world that gave nothing freely, was everything. You shift slightly beneath your hide. The stone is still cold, but your body is warmer now. Your mind begins to float again. The fire pops, ash settles. Another hour passes, unnoticed. In the deep night, time is not measured in minutes, but in heartbeats, in firelight, in breath shared beneath the same roof of stone. You are safe. You are here. And the night, though full, will pass. No talking. There was nothing left to say. The words had already been spoken. In the chase through the trees, in the carving of the meat, in the way they passed the food without a glance. Now, silence. No rushing. There was nowhere to go. No path to follow. No fire to build. No beast to chase. Only stillness, heavy as a fur hide, thick as the darkness. No clocks. Time was not made of numbers. Time was made of breath, the rise and fall of chests, the hush of wind across stone, the crack of a log in the fire. Time moved, but no one tried to hold it. Time passed by the moon. Its pale light slid across the sky like a ghost. No one looked up. They didn't need to. They felt the moon in their bones, in their blood, like a quiet tide pulling them deeper into rest by the stars, distant, sharp, unmoving. The stars told stories only the oldest could read. They were maps, calendars, gods. They watched over the night, blinking slow approval, by the slow drift of smoke from the fire. It curled lazily toward the roof, then vanished like a forgotten name. The cave air was heavy with it. It burned the throat gently, like memory. No one complained. They sat in silence, shoulders touching, eyes half closed, not quite asleep, not quite awake. And the silence sat with them. It was not empty. It was not cold. It was a presence, old, familiar, kind. It wrapped around them like a friend. It spoke no words, but it said everything. No stories were needed now. The children had heard stories before, of wolves with glowing eyes, of rivers that swallowed men, of the first fire stolen from the sky. But not now. Now, only quiet. The night told its own. It spoke through the wind that whispered at the cave's mouth, through the fire that crackled like footsteps far away, through the distant cry of an owl searching, through the sighs of those who drifted into dreams. You lie still, eyes closed. You don't need to listen for danger. Others are watching. You don't need to count time. The fire does that for you. You don't need to speak. The night is already speaking, and somewhere, within the silence, beneath the stars, inside the cave carved by time itself, you sleep again. At last, a sound pierced the silence. A bird chirped, Not a song, just a note. Software, hesitant, but enough. One small sound to tell the world. Night is ending. A breeze returned. It crept into the cave like a curious animal. Cool, dry, edged with the scent of dust and wildflowers. It brushed against cheeks and stirred loose hairs. It told the sleepers, the world was waking. The sky turned silver. Not blue, not gold, just silver. A soft glow on the edge of the world. The moon was gone. The stars had faded. And in their place, light, gentle, and slow, took shape. One by one, they stirred. First, the father. His eyes opened, heavy with the memory of dreams. His hand reached for the spear before he even sat up. Then the mother, quiet and steady. She stretched her arms and listened, not with ears, but with instinct. Then the children, blinking, yawning, curling deeper into hides that could no longer hold off the morning chill. The fire was embers, no flames, just a faint orange glow beneath the ash, still warm, still alive. The ash was cold. Dust covered the stone around the pit. Some of it still carried the shape of yesterday's wood, but it would need new life. And soon. But the cave was alive. A body shifted. A foot scraped the ground. A soft cough echoed off the walls. No words were spoken yet, but there was movement, there was breath, there was waking. Another day, it had come again, as it always did. Without asking, without mercy, without pause. Another hunt. They did not know what they would find, or if they would return with anything at all. But the hunt was the rhythm of their lives. Without it, nothing moved forward. Another walk, across stone, through grass, into woods filled with shadows and memory. Feet would ache, hands would sting, but they would walk, because to live was to move. They stood, one at a time, bones cracking, joints slow, limbs unfolding like roots breaking through hard soil, stretched, arms above heads, backs bent, a groan here, a yawn there. The children rubbed their eyes. The man tied leather around his waist. The woman stirred the ashes, looking for heat. The cave sighed, emptied of stillness, and began again. Just as their ancestors had, just as their children would. The sun was not yet over the trees. The birds were only just waking. The day had not even shown its teeth yet. But already, the long sleep was over, and the long day had just begun. There are no words here, not the kind you know. No alphabet, no ink, no paper, only stone, only silence, but not emptiness, only shadows. They stretch along the cave walls, long and crooked, cast by the last breath of firelight. Your own shadow joins them, moving slowly as you rise. The walls flicker. Figures twist and disappear, then reappear. Lines, scratched in red clay, painted in soot and crushed berries, drawn with fingers, bone, or stick. Some lines are thick, bold, sure. Some are faint, faded by wind and time. All of them speak, and silence. The family doesn't talk. No one explains. No one points or asks. They've seen the walls 100 times, and yet every time feels different. They stand still. They look, not for long, just enough. But the walls speak. They speak of the hunt, of the great beasts, larger than trees, covered in fur and rage, of men with spears running into the mouth of death, because hunger left no choice. They speak of the river, of fish that glinted like silver gods, of storms that tore the sky in half. They speak of birth, of death, of fear, of joy, all without sound. One child lifts her hand, presses her palm to the red outline on the wall. Another hand, painted long ago, so small, so human, so gone. She presses hers beside it. Same shape, same bones, different time. You stare, too. You see a circle with spikes, maybe a sun or an eye or something else entirely. You see a man with no face, a bird with two heads, a line of dots leading to nowhere. The symbols aren't puzzles. They don't ask to be solved. They only ask to be seen. Because someone, long ago, sat in this same spot, held the same dust, felt the same cold, and thought, I was here. And so they left a mark. Not to be remembered, just to be real. Now you see it. Now you remember. You take a breath, deep, slow. The others begin to move. The father grabs his spear. The mother ties her bundle. The children gather stones and hide. You look once more at the wall, not for answers, just for connection. Then you turn and follow the others into the light. Because the walls have finished their story, and now it's time to live your own. Imagine the cave wall. You are deep within the stone. No sunlight reaches here, no wind, only the heartbeat of fire and the breath of those who have entered before. Cold, it seeps into your skin, not the sharp bite of winter wind, but something deeper, older, like the chill of untouched time. Rough. Your fingertips feel it first. Jagged ridges, tiny cracks. The memory of water that once ran here, centuries ago. But then, smooth in patches, like skin, like river stone, as if the wall itself had been waiting for fingers to find it. You press your palm flat. It fits perfectly. The stone does not resist. And then, they noticed it. Not just the shape, not just the smoothness, but something more. An invitation. No words for art, no concept of expression, just a feeling in the bones. Here, leave something here. They touched it, not just once, again. And again, exploring the wall, its texture, its temperature, its secrets. And one day, they drew, not quickly, not confidently, slowly. The first line may have been an accident, a scratch, a mark made by a stone or a bone. But it stayed. It did not wash away. It did not fade with breath or time. It remained. And something stirred inside. So they scratched again and again. Circles, lines, spirals, marks that meant something or nothing. But still, they meant. Soft enough to scratch. They learned what worked. Charcoal from the fire, red dust from the hills, white chalk from river cliffs. They crushed it between stones, mixed it with spit, with animal fat, with water from the stream. Then they painted, with fingers, with sticks, with chewed wood brushes, with bones. They painted with what they had, and what they felt, strong enough to last. Because those lines are still there. Thousands of years later, you can stand before them, still dark, still deep, still saying, we were here. Not kings, not gods, not warriors, just people, tired, cold, afraid, but alive. They didn't write stories. They didn't name themselves. But in the stillness of that stone, they spoke anyway. And now, you've heard them. Their voice, quiet, patient, ancient, is in the wall. And now it's in you. They didn't have brushes, no tools made by hands shaped for art, no delicate pencils, no smooth chalkboards, no tubes of color waiting on shelves. So they made their own, with what the earth gave them, with what their hands could shape. They crushed red ochre, a dusty, earthy powder, bright as dried blood, red as the setting sun. They scraped it from the rock faces, collecting it in small piles like treasure. Yellow clay, soft and sticky, warmed by the sun. They gathered it from riverbanks, its pale color like faded leaves. Charcoal from the fire, black and brittle, fragments of flame cooling in the ashes. They mixed it with animal fat, thick and greasy, smelling of the hunt, of life taken and life given. Spit, wet, warm, human, binding the colors, making the dust stick to stone. Water, cold and clear, from streams that whispered over stones. flowing life into pigment. Blood, rare and sacred, a deep red, the color of living. They dipped fingers, thick with color. They pressed their hands to the wall, smudging, tracing, marking, chewed sticks into brushes, softened the ends with teeth, making tools as simple as breath. Blew pigment through hollow bones, like the breath of the cave itself. A mist of color carried softly onto the stone. The wall became their sky, a canvas vast and endless, stretching beyond the cave's mouth, filled with shapes and symbols, stories told without words, their voice echoing through time, whispers and roars, songs without sound, their memory held in color and line, a record of existence, proof they were here, and now you see it, feel it, touch it. Even though you stand thousands of years later, the colors still speak, the hands that made them long gone, but their story remains, in ochre and charcoal, in blood and spit, on cold stone, they live. They painted what they saw. Not just shapes, not just animals, but the world itself, captured in stone. What they felt, the rush of wind in their hair, the pounding of hooves on soft earth, the fear that curled like smoke in their chests, the hope that burned like the fire in their hands. What they feared, mammoths, great giants of fur and tusks, slow-moving mountains with fierce eyes. They filled the walls with their heavy feet, their enormous trunks reaching down to the earth, their shadow stretching across the cave floor. Bison, thick and powerful, grazing on endless grasslands, their horns like curved moons, muscles rippling beneath shaggy coats. Deer, slender and swift, darting through forests and shadows, their antlers like branches reaching for the sky. Lions, silent hunters in golden light, eyes fierce, watching from the darkness, the promise of danger painted in each curve. Horses, wild and free, galloping across plains of stone and memory, mane flying like wind through the painted sky. Bears, massive and silent, guardians of the woods and caves, power drawn in broad strokes and heavy lines. Animals ran across the stone, not still or lifeless, but moving, breathing, alive, full of motion. The artist's hands caught movement, the rush of a chase, the leap of a jump, the spin of turning hooves, full of life. Some had many legs, drawn not in error, but to show the speed of running. The blur of motion captured with care. Some had spears drawn into them, thin, sharp lines cutting across fur and bone. The memory of the hunt, of struggle.
Survival. Like a story told without words. Each stroke, each mark, a moment frozen in time. You can almost hear the pounding of hooves, the crack of a spear breaking skin, the breath of hunters held tight. The cave walls do not just show animals, they show life itself. Danger, beauty, fear, hope. And in this story, written on stone, you find the pulse of a world long gone, but never forgotten. And then, there were hands. Not just animals, not just shapes and lines, but hands. Dozens of them, pressed flat against the cold stone, outlined in red, black, white. Each one a silent signature, a mark of presence, a breath caught in time. A man's hand, strong, broad, weathered by seasons of wind and work. A woman's, delicate yet determined, with fingers curved like branches. A child's, small, uncertain, reaching. Sometimes the fingers were missing, bent or broken, or just never there. Were they injured? Or was it a sign? A symbol of something deeper, a mark of belonging, a story told without words. No one knows, but those hands remain, frozen in the rock, reaching out across 30,000 years, among the animals, among the hands. There were other marks, dots, spirals, grids, V-shapes, lines, patterns repeated again and again, across continents, across generations. What did they mean? We don't know. Some believe they were calendars, tracking the seasons, the moon, the hunt. Others say hunting maps, guiding footsteps through forests and rivers. Some think they were spiritual signs, a connection to the world beyond. Or maybe they were just decoration. Patterns made because they mattered, because they were remembered. They didn't draw in daylight. Most caves were deep, dark, still. They brought fire with them, a burning torch, a stone lamp filled with fat and moss. The flickering light made the walls dance. Painted shapes shimmered. Bisons moved. Deer leapt. This was not just drawing. It was performance, a private ritual, a moment suspended between breath and belief. No one wrote words, but stories don't need writing. They sat near the wall, pointed to a painting. This one, someone might say, was your grandfather's hunt. Another points. She dreamed of lions, so we painted the lion on her sleeping wall. Stories whispered in the dark, passed from parent to child, from child to child, until no one remembered the hunter, only the shape of the animal he chased. This was the beginning, not just of art, but of imagination, the idea that something could be more. A mark could be a memory. A shape could mean danger. A line could mean pride. This was not survival. This was expression. A luxury, a mystery, proof they were more than muscle and bone, more than flesh and fear. They were dreamers. We'll never know for sure, but maybe to remember, to hope, to teach, to explain, to control, to believe. Maybe they thought painting the bison would make the hunt easier. Maybe the lion was painted to keep it away. Maybe they painted because they had to, because the wall called to them, because the silence begged for color. When they finished, they cleaned their hands, set down the torch, stepped back. The wall glowed, alive with shapes, alive with breath. They nodded. They didn't need applause or a signature. The painting was not theirs anymore. It belonged to the cave, to time, to whoever came next. The world outside is vast, endless, stretching beyond the cave's shadow, beyond the flickering firelight, beyond everything known. Unforgiving. The wind could slice like a blade. The rain could soak through every layer. The sun could scorch the skin raw. Every step carried risk. Every breath could bring danger. Full of hidden dangers. Predators moved silently through the brush. Teeth and claws waited in shadows. Rivers ran swift and cold, ready to pull the careless under. Poisonous plants hid beneath green leaves. Rocks tumbled in unseen places. The ground itself could betray. But they were not helpless. They found places to hide. Thick groves of trees where wolves hesitated to follow. Tall grasses that bent low, hiding footsteps. Nests of bushes and hollows beneath fallen logs. Places to rest. Safe corners where the wind did not reach. Flat stones warmed by the sun. Shelters made of branches and leaves, woven by patient hands. Places to be safe. Even in this wild world, there were pockets of peace. Quiet spaces carved out by instinct and care. Because to survive, you had to find more than food. You had to find home. They didn't build homes like ours. No bricks stacked in meat rows, no nails hammered into wood, no doors to open or close, no walls to paint or floors to sweep. Instead, they used what was there. Nature provided the architecture. The earth shaped their refuge. Caves, dark, cool hollows carved by time itself, safe from storms, guarded by stone, walls that held stories, and firelight, a fortress where the wild couldn't reach them easily. Rock overhangs, shelters hanging like giant cliffs, offering dry space beneath heavy stone, places to rest without the full weight of the open sky. Dense thickets, thick bushes woven together by branches and vines, walls made of leaves and thorns hiding from view. A secret fortress against the cold and prying eyes. Large trees, roots deep in the earth, branches spreading wide, offering shade and shelter. A natural umbrella against sun and rain, anywhere that could shield them from wind, rain, and cold. The wild was harsh, the weather unforgiving. To survive, shelter was sacred. More than protection, it was comfort, it was warmth, it was hope. A cave was more than shelter. It was a fortress, a home, a place where families could gather, where stories were told, where fires burned bright and long, a place to breathe, to rest, to be human. Sometimes the cave wasn't enough. Though the stone walls held stories and firelight, there were days when the family needed more, when the cave felt too small or the food was too far away. They made shelters from branches, simple lean-tos built against rocks or fallen trees, walls woven from sticks and leaves, woven tight enough to keep out wind and rain. Sometimes they dug shallow pits, then covered them with branches and animal skins. A soft bed close to the earth, hidden from the cold and the curious eyes of predators. These shelters were temporary. They moved when the food ran out, moved with the seasons, chasing warmth in winter, shade in summer, water in spring. Fire was part of the home. It was more than heat. It was life. Fire kept the cold away. It burned away the sharp edges of night and fear. It kept animals at bay, wolves, bears, cats with teeth sharper than stone. They placed fires carefully, not too close to burn the fragile roofs made of leaves and branches, not too far to be useless in the chill. The smoke drove insects, biting flies and crawling things that haunted the skin. The light brought comfort, a glowing circle of safety in the dark. With fire, a shelter became home. But shelter did not mean safety. They knew the wild waited just beyond. Footprints of bears marked soft earth near the caves. The scent of wolves drifted on cold winds. Claw marks scarred the cave walls, a silent warning of saber-toothed cats prowling the night. Sometimes fur caught on jagged rocks. Sometimes a distant howl froze the blood. Danger was always close. They defended their shelter. Spears carved from wood, tipped with stone, sharp and deadly. Heavy rocks piled high to block entrances, logs dragged to barricade the mouth of the cave. Sometimes they fought, rarely but fiercely. The fight was brutal, teeth, claws, and hands tangled in the dark. But often, defense was enough. A fierce glare, a raised spear, a burning branch thrust into the night. Rain pounded the roofs of leaves and bark. Wind howled like a beast. Water seeped in through cracks and holes. Inside the cave, the cold crept close. They huddled together, wrapped in furs thick with warmth, close to the fire, sharing breath and silence. They waited. Shelters were not just protection. They were community. Families clustered close. Neighbors visited with smiles and stories. Laughter spilled like firelight into the night. The cave was a meeting place, a center of life. Here, life was more than survival. It was connection. Scrapes and bruises soothed by careful hands, broken bones wrapped and held with sticks and leather. They rested here, watched by others, cared for. The world outside waited, but here, they were safe. For now. They didn't stay forever. When food was gone, when the river dried, they moved on. But they returned. The cave remembered. Their marks on the walls, the ashes of their fires, the faint scent of lives lived here long ago. A place of memory, of home. Sometimes they hid deeper, secret corners carved in shadow, dark crevices shielded from wind and eyes, safe spots for babies, storage for tools, shelter from storms. These hidden places were precious, guarded by silence. Shelter was more than physical. It was comfort, security, peace. A place to breathe, to dream, to be human. Food is life, the pulse that beats beneath the skin, the fire that fuels the body, the strength in every step, the promise of tomorrow. But food is more. It is warmth. Not just the heat of cooked meat, but the glow of sitting close to the fire, sharing the day's catch, fingers sticky with juice, hearts full with ease. It is comfort, the soft bite of berries, the crunch of roots, the taste of fresh water. It soothes hunger and fear alike. It is connection, passed from hand to hand, shared with family, a gift and a bond, the language of survival and trust. In the dance between hunter and prey, between gatherer and earth, food weaves the story of life itself. After the chase, the kill, the moment shifted. The pounding of feet slowed, the breath came harder, thick and ragged. The heart still raced, but now in a different rhythm. Meat hung heavy, warm and slick, fresh from the earth and blood. A prize wrested from the wild. The scent of life and death mingled, rich and raw. The air smelled of earth and fire. Smoke curled softly upward, blending with the sharp scent of fresh kill. The smell settled into their clothes, their skin, their story. They gathered, not as individuals, but as a tribe, a family bound by the hunt. All hands, strong, steady, careful. They cut, scraped, and prepared, each movement practiced, each touch certain. All eyes focused and alert, watching for danger and for each other. The work was not just survival, it was ritual, a dance as old as time. Together they shared the weight of life and death. They used sharp stones, rocks shaped by time and trial, edges chipped finely, ready to slice and carve. Flakes, thin and razor-sharp, broken from larger stones, tools made with skill and patience. Bone knives, crafted from ribs and antlers, honed to cut through skin and sinew. Skinning the animal slowly. Hands moved carefully, lifting thick fur away from flesh. The hide peeled back like a second skin, rough and heavy, but precious. Removing the fur and hide, to use for warmth, for shelter, for clothing. Carving muscle and sinew, slices cut with purpose, meat for eating, tendons for tools, bones for weapons. Each cut deliberate, a practiced art passed down through generations. Every movement precise, respectful, nothing wasted. Not a scrap lost to time. Every part held value. Fuel for fire, material for tools, strength for survival. This was not just butchery. It was ceremony, a bond between hunter and prey, life honored through care. Fire was their oven, a living flame that crackled and danced, its warmth reaching into the cold night, a gift from the earth and sky, tamed by careful hands. They roasted meat on sticks, long branches stripped of bark, piercing chunks of fresh meat, held carefully over the glowing coals, turning slowly, watching the skin crisp and bubble. Sometimes wrapped in leaves, green and fragrant, folded like a secret gift, cooking the meat gently within, the steam rising, carrying the scent of earth and smoke. Sometimes buried in hot ashes, hidden beneath a blanket of red and gray, slow cooking in the earth's warmth, softening tough fibers, making flavors deepen. Cooking made food softer, easier to chew, easier to swallow. The fire's magic breaking down the hard, raw edges of the hunt. Safer. Heat killed unseen dangers, bacteria and parasites that hid in raw flesh, protecting the body as well as feeding it. And as the meat cooked, the fire's glow brought them closer. Gathered near the warmth, sharing food and stories, waiting for the meal to be ready. Cooking was more than survival. It was ritual. It was comfort. It was a moment of peace in a world that never stopped moving. Meat was not all. Though the hunt brought strength and warmth, the earth gave more. The wild world offered roots and berries, nuts and leaves, gifts from soil and sun. They collected roots, hidden beneath the earth's surface, buried like treasure. Thick, tangled, sometimes bitter, but nourishing. Roots were dug up with sticks, simple tools sharpened for the task. Careful hands worked slowly, prying soil away, lifting food from its dark home. Berries, bright and sweet or sour, growing in clusters on thorny bushes. They picked berries carefully, learning which were safe to eat, which could sting or poison. Some plants were poisonous, a lesson learned through trial and error, a bite that burned or made the stomach churn, warning signs etched in memory. They learned which were safe, passing knowledge down through word and touch, through stories told beside fires. Some were crushed, pulverized between stones or ground with fingers, mixed with water, sometimes spit, turned into mush. A simple meal, soft and warm, easy to swallow. This was food that healed, food that sustained, food that connected them to the land, a shared gift from the earth. Food was shared. The hunt was not for one. The earth's gifts were never taken alone. They belonged to all who lived, who breathed, who waited. The group ate together. Gathered close around the fire, hands reaching for meat and berries, passing bowls made of wood and stone. Hunters gave to the elders, respecting the wisdom carved by time, their steady hands, their careful eyes, guardians of stories and survival. Mothers fed children first, soft meat, mashed berries, warm mush, nourishing the smallest, the future of the tribe. There was no waste, no greed. Every morsel treasured, every bite sacred. Eating was a ceremony, not just filling stomachs, but weaving bonds. The silent language of trust, the promise of care. Each meal was a moment of peace, a circle of life, held by firelight and shared breath. While eating, they talked, not loud or hurried, words soft, carried gently on the evening air, a language shaped by need, by closeness, by shared lives. Quiet words, simple sounds that held meaning, names of animals, places, days, hints of stories yet to be told, questions and answers, plans and memories. Soft laughter, a sound like warmth itself, the flicker of joy in a hard world. Small moments where fear faded, and they were just people, not just survivors. Sometimes, silence. Not empty or cold, but full and deep. A pause that held respect, comfort, understanding. Food was a time for connection. It tied them together, beyond hunger, beyond need. A sacred moment where bonds grew strong, where life was shared and dreams took shape in flickering firelight. Sometimes they saved food. Not every meal was eaten right away. Sometimes the hunt was good. The earth was generous. And they prepared for tomorrow. Dried meat over fire, thin strips hung from branches, smoked and dried by flickering flames. Toughened but lasting. Food that could travel far, waiting for hungry mouths. Stored in pits. Shallow holes dug into the earth, lined with leaves and moss. Meat and roots buried safely beneath soil hidden from animals and weather. Covered with leaves, a natural seal, keeping moisture away, protecting their precious stores. This was rare. The wild was uncertain, the seasons unpredictable. Food didn't wait. Most food was eaten fast, fresh and urgent, shared and consumed by all. But they learned patience, the art of saving, the wisdom of waiting, knowing when to hold on and when to let go. This small foresight, a quiet power, a step closer to tomorrow. Honey was a treasure. Golden and sticky, hidden deep inside wild hives, tucked beneath tree branches or cliff faces. Sticky and sweet, a rare delight, a gift from buzzing bees. Like liquid sunshine, capturing the scent of flowers and forests. They gathered it carefully, hands steady but cautious, braving sharp stings and angry swarms. Smoke from smoldering leaves to calm the bees. Patience and skill intertwined. Honey was medicine, healing wounds and soothing throats, a balm for tired bodies. Food, rich energy to fuel long days, a quick burst of sweetness in a harsh world. Joy, a taste of something more. A reminder that even in struggle, there was sweetness to be found. Food changed with the seasons. The world moved in rhythms, cycles of light and shadow, heat and cold. Winter meant stored roots. Beneath frozen ground, hardy roots and tubers waited, gathered in warmer days, saved for the cold months. Summer brought berries, bright, juicy bursts of color, ripening under the sun's long gaze. They gathered them fast, before the season slipped away. They adapted. Their lives shaped by the earth's pulse, by the changing sky. They watched the trees, the birds, the winds, learning when to hunt, when to gather. They planned, not with paper or clocks, but with memory, with instinct, with quiet knowledge passed from hand to hand, from mother to child. Planning was survival. Planning was hope, a promise to meet the next season and the next day. Before eating, they cleaned their hands. Rough palms wiped on leaves, soft, cool, fresh from the morning dew. Sometimes rinsed in clear water, a stream or river nearby, flowing like a quiet breath. Tools were cleaned too, sharp stones and bone knives, used again and again, scraped and rinsed, kept ready for the next hunt, the next meal. Cleanliness mattered, not just for comfort, but for health. To keep sickness at bay, to protect fragile bodies from unseen dangers. Even in a world so wild and raw, care was a quiet ritual, a small act of respect for themselves and for life. When the meal was done, the fire's glow softened. Empty bones and scraps told their story, a tale of life taken, shared, and honored. They sat by the fire, bodies heavy with fullness, faces lit by flickering flames, eyes tracing shadows on cave walls, digesting warmth. The heat seeped deep, chasing the cold from tired bones. A gentle comfort after the day's labor. Resting. No words needed. Only the quiet hum of breath and firelight. the slow rhythm of bodies settling, the day's work done. The hunt, the gathering, the sharing, all folded into night. Tomorrow, waiting. Unwritten, unknown, but coming nonetheless. And here, in this circle of light and life, they found peace, a moment held between the past and the future. And so, we come to the end of our long, slow journey, through caves and fires, through the quiet, careful lives of early humans. Their days were full, not with noise or rush, but with survival, care, and the slow, steady rhythm of nature. A life measured in moments, shared breath, soft shadows, and the gentle pulse of time itself. Thank you for walking this path with me. May the stories of those first dreamers stay with you as you rest and remind you of the long journey that brought us here. As you lie down, let your mind wander softly to the flicker of firelight, the warmth that chased away the cold. Feel the rough touch of hides against skin, the quiet breath of the night around you. Hear the stories told without words, etched in shadow, painted on stone, whispers from the distant past. They lived, they loved, and they dreamed, just like us. And in that shared humanity, we find connection across time, across space, across the silence between. If this quiet journey brought you peace, if you found calm in the shadows of the cave, and the flicker of ancient firelight soothed your mind, please consider staying with us. Join again as we wander through history, through stories whispered by time, finding stillness in the slow unfolding of life. Here, in the quiet, you are always welcome. A gentle tap on the like button lets us know you enjoyed this slow walk through history. Subscribing brings you more restful stories, slow, calm, and full of wonder, to soothe your mind and spark your curiosity. And if you feel like sharing a thought, a memory, or just a simple hello, please leave a comment below. Your presence means the world to us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for traveling through time with me. May your nights be quiet, your dreams gentle, and your mornings calm. Sleep well. Good night.